longing for God in Zion. Memory text. My soul longs, yes, even faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. Psalms 84 verse 2. In the Old Testament, Zion is often portrayed as a symbol of hope and joy for several reasons. Zion was the name of the hill in Jerusalem where the Temple of Solomon was built. It was believed to be the place where God's presence dwelled among His people. It represented the promised land that God had promised to the Israelites, a land flowing with milk and honey. Zion also represented the hope of restoration and redemption for the Israelites. Zion was associated with salvation and deliverance from enemies. The Psalms, for example, frequently speak of God's salvation coming from Zion. The idea that God would deliver His people from their enemies and establish His reign in Zion filled the Israelites with hope and joy. Zion was not just a physical place, but a spiritual and symbolic representation of God's presence, making it a source of hope and joy throughout the Old Testament.
A day in your courts is better than 1,000. In Psalm chapter 84 verses 1-4, the psalmist expresses a deep longing to dwell in the sanctuary of the Lord. The sanctuary, often understood as the temple or the dwelling place of God, held great significance in ancient Israelite worship and religious life. Being in the sanctuary meant being closer to God, experiencing His presence in a tangible way. For the psalmist, being in the sanctuary represented the opportunity to engage in heartfelt worship and devotion to the Lord. In the ancient world, cities didn't always provide the same level of security that we might enjoy today. The psalmist longs to dwell in the sanctuary because of the sense of security and peace it offers in the midst of life's challenges and uncertainties. For the Israelites, the sanctuary was the focal point of their religious identity and community life. For the psalmist, being in the sanctuary represented a deep sense of belonging to God's chosen people and participating in their shared spiritual heritage. In Psalm chapter 84 verses 5-12, the psalmist extends the blessings of the sanctuary not only to themselves, but also to others who share in the pilgrimage to the house of God. The psalmist mentions that those who set their hearts on pilgrimage to Zion will be blessed. Those who rely on God and seek Him earnestly will find blessing and favor in the sanctuary. The psalmist describes those who pass through the valley of Baca, often interpreted as a difficult or dry place, and turn it into a place of springs. Those who trust in God, even in the midst of challenges and trials, will find refreshment and blessing in the sanctuary. The psalmist speaks of those who go from strength to strength as they appear before God in Zion, spiritually renewed and empowered by the presence of God. The sanctuary is a place where people can come before God. The psalmist highlights that God hears the prayers of those who dwell in His house. The psalmist uses the metaphor of God as a sun. As the sun provides light, warmth, and sustenance to the earth, so too does God illuminate our lives with His truth, warm us with His love, and sustain us with His provision.
Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Psalm chapter 122 is a song of ascent, traditionally believed to have been written by King David. In this psalm, the worshippers express their joy and anticipation upon arriving in Jerusalem. They are filled with a sense of unity peace, and reverence for the holy city. In verse 1, the psalmist expresses gladness at the invitation to go to the house of the Lord in Jerusalem. The use of the phrase, "I was glad when they said to me, 'Let us go to the house of the Lord,'" reflects the worshipers' excitement and eagerness to worship in the sacred city. There is a sense of unity and community among the people of God. In verses 3 to 5, the psalmist expresses a desire for peace and prosperity within the walls of Jerusalem. There is hope and expectation that the city, as the dwelling place of God, will be a center of righteousness, justice, and divine presence. The worshipers express a deep love and devotion for Jerusalem, symbolizing their connection to God and their spiritual heritage. The prayer in verses 6 to 9 focuses on Jerusalem to experience peace, prosperity, and divine favor for the sake of God's people and the worship of the Lord. The psalmist speaks of praying for the well-being of Jerusalem and those who love her, emphasizing the importance of the city as a focal point for worship and spiritual communion. For Christians today, this prayer might be thought of as praying for the peace that Jesus will bring at his second coming. Those that love him will long to dwell with him forever.
Zion, the home of all nations. Psalm chapter 87 celebrates the glory and esteem of Zion, the holy city of Jerusalem, in the eyes of God and the faithful. The psalm begins by acknowledging Zion as the city founded by God himself. It is seen as the city of God's choice and establishment. Christian faith is built upon the foundation of God's love and grace, with Jesus Christ as the cornerstone. Zion is portrayed as the birthplace of believers. It is a place where people are spiritually born, indicating its significance as the spiritual center for the faithful. Christians believe in the concept of spiritual rebirth, or being born again, through faith in Jesus. Through their relationship with Jesus, Christians experience a spiritual transformation and new life. The psalm highlights that people from various nations and cultures are associated with Zion. This inclusivity underscores the universal nature of Zion's importance, as it is not limited to a specific group or ethnicity. Jesus taught of love and the inclusivity of God's love and salvation, extending to people from all nations, races, and backgrounds. Zion is depicted as a place where God provides protection and security. It is considered a safe haven for those who seek refuge in God's presence. Christians find security and protection in their faith in Jesus Christ. They believe that through Jesus, they have eternal life and are sheltered under the care of God. While Psalm chapter 87 may not have been originally intended as an allegory for Christians and Jesus, its themes of divine favor, spiritual birth, inclusivity, and protection can resonate with Christian beliefs about their relationship with Jesus Christ and their identity as members of God's spiritual kingdom.
Safety and peace of Zion. Psalm chapter 46 is a powerful declaration of God's sovereignty, protection, and presence amidst the chaos and turmoil of the world. The world is depicted as a place of turmoil and chaos, where the earth itself can be shaken by cataclysmic events like mountains falling into the sea and waters roaring and foaming. Nations are described as being in uproar, kingdoms falling, and the very earth melting at the voice of God. Despite the chaos and upheaval, God is a refuge and strength for those who trust in Him. The imagery of a river whose streams, Make Glad the City of God portrays a sense of peace and tranquility amidst the turmoil of the world. The repetition of God's presence as a fortress and helper underscores the idea that even in the midst of chaos, those who trust in God need not fear, for He is with them. When nations are in uproar and kingdoms fall, God intervenes by lifting His voice and causing the earth to melt. This imagery suggests that God's power is supreme and can bring about profound changes in the world. The text invites people to come and see the desolations that God has brought upon the earth. God acts decisively to bring about justice and to address the violence and destruction caused by human actions. God's response to violence includes making wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the implements of war, such as bows, spears, and shields, symbolizing His ability to put an end to conflict and bring about peace. The passage concludes with a call to be still and know that God is God. It emphasizes God's ultimate sovereignty over the nations and the earth. God declares that He will be exalted among the nations and in the earth.
Immovable like Mount Zion. In Psalm chapter 125 verses 1 to 2, those who trust in the Lord are portrayed as being like Mount Zion, a symbol of stability, strength, and permanence. The psalmist uses the imagery of mountains surrounding Jerusalem to illustrate how the Lord surrounds and protects His people. This portrayal suggests that those who trust in God are secure and protected by His presence both now and forevermore. They are likened to Mount Zion, unshakable and enduring in their faith and relationship with God. Psalms 125, 3-5 recites how the temptation for the righteous comes when they are faced with the dominance or rule of the wicked over the land allotted to them. If the wicked were to have authority over the righteous, there might be a temptation for the righteous to respond with evil or to compromise their principles in order to survive or thrive under the wicked's rule. The lesson for us from these verses is that even when the wicked may seem to have power or control, the righteous should remain steadfast in their commitment to goodness and uprightness. They should trust in the Lord to ultimately deliver them from the influence of the wicked and to establish peace and justice. Furthermore, the psalm emphasizes the importance of remaining upright in heart and turning away from crooked ways. Those who persist in evil will ultimately face judgment, as the Lord will banish them along with the evildoers. Therefore, the lesson is to trust in the Lord's goodness, remain upright in heart, and avoid the temptation to compromise with evil, knowing that ultimately, peace will prevail for those who follow the ways of righteousness.
Thank you for studying with us. We hope you will give this video a like, and please subscribe. And always, keep the faith of Jesus.